I'm Ashley. Welcome to today's video tutorial. I'm going to show you exactly how to make this super trendy bow side seam applique. It is all the rage in all the embroidery groups. No one really knows how to do it, so I have tested a few different techniques and I'm going to show you my favorite way, as well as I'm going to show you some of my fails and some things to avoid. So let's go ahead and dive into this tutorial. I'll show you everything we need today and I'll give you all my tips and tricks along the way. The holiday seasons are my absolute favorite time to embroider, whether it's gifts, whether it's items for me or items to sell, and this side bow applique just screamed so many possibilities for the holidays, for sweatshirt season, for kids, for adults. It was such a winner. There were so many different bow designs to choose from. I'll link the exact one I used below, as well as similar ones that I found. I mean, there's even, I saw Applique Alley is coming out with a Christmas tree one. I'm seeing a candy cane one. So excited for the possibilities. What we will need to get started is a t-shirt or sweatshirt. I'm going to be using a heavy blend Gildan sweatshirt. I will link everything I used today in the description box below. So next, we're going to choose our coordinating fabric. I have been waiting patiently to use this Christmas plaid and so I thought this would be the perfect match. I'm going to use a cotton material. I've seen people use those fancy sequins. Next, with that fabric, we'll be using some Heat and Bond Light. This is so essential. If you're new to applique, I would not applique without Heat and Bond Light. This goes on the back of our fabric and I actually pre-prepped this one from my test earlier, and so you see it makes it like shiny. It adheres the fabric to your garment at the end when we do the final press, and it makes it so easy to trim. So you must have some Heat and Bond Light when doing applique. Next, we'll need our applique scissors. Again, another essential. As you can see, these are a curved shaped scissors. These are my go-to tried and true applique scissors. I have rebought these multiple times because I lost some. So maybe they'll turn up somewhere. I'm going to have some regular fabric scissors. Hopefully no one used these to cut paper with, but fabric scissors for when we are going to trim the side seam. We have our sweatshirt. We have our applique fabric and material to help the applique fabric, the Heat and Bond Light, our scissors. Next, we need our embroidery hoop. I have seen so many different ways to do this. I was testing one earlier, just my placement of this particular design. I saw a technique where you floated it. I also saw a technique where you hooped it. I'm gonna try to hoop it because I found the floating on an actual hoop was a little cumbersome. So I'm gonna try to hoop my design versus floating it. If I were to float, I've already stitched this out, and so I would just make sure my placement was correct over that. I also did one earlier for my daughter. So sneak peek if you don't want to ruin the surprise. I did one earlier. It turned out so cute, but I will tell you some things I messed up on. For her particular little tiny sweatshirt, I think the bow turned out too big. I would do a smaller one, but I used a fast frame because figuring out how to get this up there without getting all scrunched was a little difficult to fit it on the hoop. So instead of having to worry about things getting stitched and stitching in the hole as they call it, I used a fast frame. It worked fabulous. I'll put a little clip here of how that worked. But I kept the band on the bottom. So as you can see, these sweatshirts have a band on the bottom. I don't know if that's my favorite look. It did stitch through the band. My machine was talking to me, of course, when it did stitch through the band. But I'm gonna try the technique where you cut the band off the bottom, okay? So for that, you could just use fabric scissors. I might end up doing that. Or if you have it handy, you can use a rotary cutter and mat. So we're gonna take off the band of this sweatshirt to make it easy peasy to embroider. So the digitizer that I bought from recommended tearaway stabilizer, and that's what I did here, and it looks pretty. I'm not sure how it's gonna wash. So another digitizer I saw recommended cutaway, but then I was wondering how is that gonna look finished. So I'm gonna go with what this digitizer that I bought from recommended, which was a tearaway. So I'm going to do 2 layers of tearaway and I'm going to hoop it. I'm also going to use my embroidery machine, obviously back there. It's a 6 needle embroidery machine. If you have a single needle embroidery machine or like a 5x7 hoop, you will have to maybe stick to a smaller bow. I'm going to be using a 6-inch bow. 6-inch tall bow by 4-inch wide. I'm also going to be using my pink heat press from Heat Press Nation. I need to do one more piece of Heat and Bond Light onto my fabric so I can have the other side of the bow, but we'll do that in a little bit. We'll keep it a little cool in here until that. First, we're going to cut the band off of our sweatshirt. So I'm cutting, I don't know if my camera cut off, but I'm cutting along this bottom seam where it kind of linked to the band, and then if I want to cut more off, I will. But it's almost like it's almost a hemmed seam versus a raw seam. Gives me a little guide. What do we think? Should we cut all that off? I kind of like it. I think it gives it a seam. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going all the way around, and then if I don't like it at the end, we'll just cut it off. But at least I think that's kind of a cool spot. So again, it's in between this part and this part, this little edge right here. Okay, so now we have all of the band off. There is kind of a side seam already, but I'm gonna go ahead and mark it. I don't have any like chalk or anything like that, so I'm just gonna use my Target stickers. These are my go-to. I love these. And I'm just gonna mark my center is. Now that looks like a center seam there. Let's see. Okay, so there's that one. So that's nice and marked. And then this one is a little off, but we're just gonna go with it. Okay. All right, so now it is a moment of truth. We are gonna hoop aside. And this is where some wiggle room comes into play. I'm gonna try to get it as close to this bottom as possible. I also need to think about how tall it is on my hoop and how far I can go in my depth of my hoop without hitting like the edges. So a little something to think about. If you were floating, you would just slide it onto like the fast frame or pin it on, but I'm gonna hoop it just to make it a little easier so I don't have to do all that pinning and clipping. So here's a little look at a sneak peek of this design. I think that's gonna look so cute. It's about 6 inches, so yeah, I think that's gonna be perfect. I'm gonna hoop my item so it's almost at this edge. I might even let this be in here. So let's see if I can gently take this out, okay? Let's see. And it might be beneficial for you to go ahead and do a test stitch of that first applique position, and then you can place your item. Don't know how easy this is going to be, so let's see. Since I am using a giant 8x13 Mighty Hoop on this one, I'm just going to use my Mighty Hoop hooping station because it's easier for me. So I'm just going to find that center and follow it down. So I want that bottom to be right about, let's try that. So the hoop is going to go there. And then this will be here. What do you think? I think it's gonna work good. So, okay, I'm just gonna make sure it's nice and tight on this hoop. This is right here, we peek under, that's our bow. It's not too close to that edge, so I think we're gonna be just fine. We're gonna hoop this upside down because, I'll show you in a second. We're ready to get this on the machine. As you can see, I have the bow upside down. I rotated it so when you're putting your item on the embroidery machine, you don't want all of this back all up in here. You want the least amount of items in the way to eliminate mess ups or bunching or sewing stuff together. So I have my tubular support on here. I like to use it for when I'm doing sweatshirts or heavy things. I'm going to take, I was using my fast frame earlier for that smaller size. And so I'm going to take this, put it on the machine, making sure I'm not going to sew anything. Now the moment of truth, we are going to trace this out. We're going to trace it to see where it's going to go. We're also tracing it to make sure we're not going to hit our hoops or mess up our machine. This digitizer also put in some stops, which I'm super thankful for, meaning it's gonna applique position, it's gonna stop, let you put your applique material down, it's gonna stop, and then you can cut, and then it'll do the final stitch out. If you're wondering what all of those steps mean, I have a little hand that says pause on mine. You can probably add those in to your machines as well if it doesn't show up in yours. So we are gonna trace. I'm a little worried that it's gonna hit, so let me push it up just a little. Woo. Okay, so it actually was in the right spot, so I'm gonna move it back and see what that does. I also think my sticker's okay, but I'm gonna go ahead and take it off. Alright, we're doing a Madeira 1747. It's a gorgeous color, so let's go ahead and get this stitching. Alright, so now it's time for our applique fabric. I am just going to place this. I'm going to try to, I like this white line as my center, and so I'm going to try to just follow it down the center. Trying to keep my, if you have a pattern, make sure you look at the pattern. Okay, I think it's all covered. Again, this has the Heat and Bond light on it. So I'm going to show you a quick clip right here on how to adhere your Heat and Bond light to your fabric. It makes applique so much better and so easy. So to use the Heat and Bond light for our applique fabric, we are going to cut a section of Heat and Bond light that will make sure to cover our applique design. Then we are going to cut our applique fabric just a smidge bigger than the piece of Heat and Bond light. But you do not want some of the sticky Heat and Bond light to get on your heat press or iron. We are also going to pre-press our fabric to make sure to get any wrinkles out before we put the Heat and Bond light on. Again, I'm trimming the Heat and Bond light to make sure we don't get any glue on our heat press or iron. You just heat according to the instructions, and you will know it's done when you can peel it and it looks silky, smooth, and shiny plastic. Perfect for embroidery and applique. Another rule of thumb, no pun intended, do not use your fingers when you are doing applique. This little chopstick thing came with my machine. It's like my little stylus. You can use a wooden dowel, a chopstick, something other than your fingers, because we're gonna try to make sure this fabric doesn't move, doesn't bubble. Sometimes it can make little bubbles, so do not use your fingers. Okay, just had to say that. Okay, so it just finished that tack down stitch of the applique fabric. So it stopped, and I'm gonna take it off the machine. We're gonna do a little trim up, and we're gonna cut this sweatshirt. So here is what it looks like right now. You probably can't see the outline, but we're gonna cut around it. So let's go over and take it to the table. So this is where these amazing applique curved scissors come into play. I'm actually gonna use something else as well. I'm gonna be using a seam ripper to get in these little intricate parts, and I'll show you my tip on how I do that without hopefully cutting the sweatshirt. We wanna make sure we don't disrupt our hooping. We are gonna very carefully take our applique scissors. I like to hold my fabric up and kind of get in there and get as close as possible to that line without cutting it. I'm going to get in that little corner, and then I'm going to kind of wiggle around. So I'm just going to shift it. Again, holding my arm up, I like to kind of give it a little tension and get in there like this. These curved scissors make it so easy to get around versus having to worry about cutting your sweatshirt. And so I'm just going around. The Heat and Bond light makes it like a dream to cut through, and you also, that's going to help it not fray as well. Okay, so I'm making my way around. This one's a little tricky probably to get on camera, but I'm just going to get in those corners, and I'm going to try to show you close up. So we've done pretty good so far. We've got as close as we really can. In here, inside this bow, are two little areas. We are gonna take our seam ripper and we are just gently gonna kind of poke and see if we can make a little tiny, get one of those little fibers. See how I got that little, like one or two of the little fibers of that fabric? And we're gonna try to cut it. And we made a little tiny, tiny hole because we don't want to cut that sweatshirt. That is the worst. I've done it before. I've cut through t-shirts, sweatshirts, you name it. I want to make sure we're not in the sweatshirt when I cut. Oh, here we go. And I'm going to make a little cut. Let's see. Ah, perfect. Okay. You'll get the hang of it the more you do it. You'll be able to feel that first layer. And then you take those curved scissors and we're just gonna kind of make little notches and make our way around this bow. And there you have a beautiful center without the headache of making a big hole in your garment. So we're just gonna go in there. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, so let's do this other side. Okay, so now comes the fun part. We're gonna trim these little tails. And let's see how close we got to the edge. Oh my gosh. Let's see how we did. It's looking good. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in this middle section and cut that out. I have seen two different techniques. So here's what that looks like, mostly trimmed up. I got so close to the edge. I do need to do just a little more trimming, but I think it looks good for now. So I have to decide. I have seen two different ways to do this. I've seen where you go ahead and cut the sweatshirt out and go ahead and do that final satin stitch, and I've also seen where people just leave the sweatshirt and then they cut it out after. I'm gonna try to cut the sweatshirt, this little triangle piece out, and then we're gonna stitch it down. I'm debating whether I need to pin it. I'm gonna try it and let's just see what happens. I'm hoping for a cleaner stitch out on the section if I cut the sweatshirt now versus after, but let's just see how it goes. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think that turned out fantastic. So let's get it back on the machine for that final satin stitch. I'm so excited. look at that gorgeous stitch out. So I'm gonna trim up. I didn't get as close as I wanted right here, so I'm gonna try to gently, very delicately go in and get some of that fuzz off, and then I'll take a heat gun to it. But I am super pleased with how this turned out, and I'll show it to you on just so you can see what it would look like when you wear it. So I am going to try and trim it up while it's still in the hoop, just to give me a little more control. This is super tricky. I definitely think the idea of cutting this part, the triangle out, 100% is for me. If I was trying to cut this after, oh, I would be so nervous I was going to cut the stitches. I'm debating on cutting the little angle and then kind of going out. What do you think? Ooh, let's take it out and then I'll decide from there. Okay, so I'm going to gently take my tearaway off the back. I like to hold on to the stitches when I pull it off, just so I'm not yanking. That looks so cute. Okay, I'm gonna trim up some of the fuzz and then I'm gonna take the heat gun and try to just seal any edges. Oh, I can't decide on that bottom part. Should I do? Oh, this is a decision. Okay, so I'm gonna go through and get some of these raggy edges and let's see what we can clean up. Oh yeah, it's cleaning up pretty nice. Ooh, gentle. You don't want to cut those stitches. Ooh, that looks so good. Okay, let me take the heat gun to it and then I'll show you it on. Last but not least, we are going to do a final press to make sure that Heat and Bond Light adheres. The fabric actually looks really good, but just to make sure this fabric, it's almost like Heat and Bond Light, it's almost like a little glue to glue that fabric to the sweatshirt. It looks so good. Okay, I can't decide if I'm going to take off this seam down here or cut up. What would you do? I'm still debating. I have room to play. I haven't done anything yet. Let me show you my first one that I messed up on. So somehow I shoved my mighty hoop in too hard and it shifted my whole thing. I was able to save it, but it looks a little janky. So look at the difference between these two. You can tell like how rough it is, and you can see right here where I was trying to trim and I accidentally cut the thread. So I would try your best not to cut near that thread. I did use the heat gun and kind of like sealed those edges, but I'm not sure they're gonna stay. So for sure, I think cutting the middle out while you're still appliquing and doing the satin stitch is definitely the way to go. I mean, look how beautiful. This one I went all the way down, which I like, but I don't know, which one do you like better? Should I cut the little bow sections out? I think this is a great try. Again, trial and error. Find what technique you really like to do and what works best for the machine that you're using, the hoops you're using, whether you're using a hoop, whether you're floating, whether you're putting it on a fast frame. So let's go ahead and do this real quick. But yeah, I am super excited. It doesn't have to be long, just a little bit. To give it some heat. Cute. Oh, so cute. And this side, we'll just pretend, we'll just have no one look at this side. It's a hot mess, but at least we saved it. For a second there, I thought the whole sweatshirt was ruined, but. Okay, moment of truth. Let's try it on and see how it actually looks on. Okay, are you ready? I might put like a big Mary or even a monogram on here. Look how cute this is. I really like the length too. So let me know, are you trying this trend? I am in love with it. I have so many ideas for the holidays, and so I will link everything I used today, including the designs, the materials. in the description box below so you can check that out. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe if you are new. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.